What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined as always by Connor Rogers, fresh off of geeking out over defensive X's and O's for War Room, where we also announced our latest jersey giveaway winner. So if you're not subscribed to War Room, go do it now because we got more film room and more content hitting there. We're also going to have our training camp special, hour long plus, going to drop there. CR, how you doing? How you feeling?
Good. This one's going to be a little tougher today. You got to admit, like
Yes.
the defense, I could have rambled on for 4 hours because of all of the great things they've done over the last couple of years, whether it's personnel, the scheme. We use the phrase a lot, like pressing the right buttons at the right times in scenarios based on down and distance. And with the offense, there's just been so much volatility that I don't think the Jets would ever sit and look at you and tell you what they really wanted to be the last couple of years, especially when you lose your starting quarterback that likes things a very specific way in, the first game of last season. And then you have to kind of change things for guys that have like 1/50th of his talent. But we're gonna go through some numbers today. I think more run game focused and what the Jets can do this year with the talent that they have, which is a much better looking group on paper.
Yeah, I think let's start with the running game because my theory of the case this year is that the Jets are going to be more run heavy than people expect. I think their draft points in that direction. I think they want to help protect Aaron Rodgers. I think Breece Hall is going to be the focal point of this offense, and the goal will be if there's certain weeks Aaron Rodgers only has to throw like 23 passes, like awesome. Let's make sure he's healthy, fresh, and when he needs to drop back 50 or 60 times, he's good to do that. And then maybe that's down the stretch, maybe that's once every 3 or 4 weeks, but for the most part, I think the Jets are going to run the hell out of the football, and I think Aaron Rodgers is okay with that. You look at some of the stuff he was doing with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. I feel like everything is going to flow through Breece and this newly rebuilt offensive line that now has three new starters, has AVT coming back, has Fashanu off the bench if someone gets hurt. Talk about schematically how the Jets are going to try to run the football. I'm assuming there'll be some inspiration from the Shanahan scheme. There'll be some inspiration from what Rodgers and Hackett did when they were together in Green Bay. The Jets also have a guy like Corley who could get involved in, jet sweeps and doing other things that are kind of like the running game, even though they're short passes. What are we looking at here when it comes to running the football? And do you think that theory generally kind of sounds right about their offensive scheme?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the Jets have built a great defense and they want to protect their great quarterback, and they feel like they got the right ingredients on offense to do that. Now, the Jets last year, they were in 11 personnel, so three wide receivers on the field, one tight end, one running back, about 66% of the time. There's been NFL teams over the last couple of years, like Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings and Sean McVay with the Rams. There's times where they could be in the high 80s, low 90s. But I think every team in the NFL, their lead personnel grouping is 11. And it's usually by a wide margin. So 66% of the time is actually kind of low for the Jets. And when you look at it, not only with Rodgers and Hackett does that check out, but also their personnel that checks out as well. Their second most used personnel group would be 12. So one running back, two tight ends. That's about 17.5. And that checks out, right? This is, I think, what the Jets want to play heavier, is what I like to say. Whether that's two backs or two tight ends, it just adds more of a blocking element to this team. I think with Conklin and the development of Ruckert, the Jets really like their tight end room, where I think that number of 12 personnel, I think it could be even in the 20s this year if Ruckert stays healthy, if Conklin stays healthy, because then you kind of have the ability to not only show a run heavy look, but the Jets are going to throw, we've talked about this, the Jets are going to throw the ball a lot to Conklin this year. He's going to be on the field and part of this pass game a lot. I think it's
Yes.
going to put Rucker in advantageous spots that he's going to get looks as well. Because the Jets, especially early on, why Mike Williams is trying to get his feet under him, recovering from injury, I don't know if you want to be trotting 11 personnel out there for 80% of the game, right? And then you kind of get these groupings that are all under the 10% threshold. Like they run, and this might have been even because they had Cook at times last year. Like they ran 21, 7% of the time, 13, about a little under 6% of the time, 22, 3% of the time. Like, and they went empty, not empty, but one back and no tight ends, for I think 6 plays I had it. It's probably not a good idea if you're the Jets last year. You get into the run game. This is what I'm more interested to keep an eye on because I think this is where we're going to see a little bit of hopefully some evolution is what I would like to call it with the signings that the additions that they've made. I think this team wants to be a more downhill running team, a team that can man block. Tyron Smith is a great, great man scheme run blocker. You have John Simpson here, who is a really good puller and a guy that could play that way as well. Tippmann and AVT are so athletic, but they're of pretty good strength, especially AVT, that
Yep.
scheme doesn't really matter for them, which is why they were drafted as high as they were. Like AVT was a guard taken in the top 20 because he's a 99th percentile athlete, but he also is strong as shit. And then Tippmann, he's your center, so he allows you to do some of the athletic things that required from that position, but he's also he has pretty good strength considering how tall he is and needs to find a way to get leverage. And we already know Morgan Moses is a guy that could play really, really heavy. The Jets last year, they ran outside zone 35% of the time. They ran inside zone 15% of the time. So 50% of their run game was dedicated, zone oriented. And then you look at, it was a mix between downhill, man running, power, counter, draw plays, a little bit of trap, not much, and things like that. I think the numbers for all those things go up this year. I just think the Jets are going to be a team that, whether they want the backside tackle to be pulling, they want the guard to be pulling, you'll see power running, you'll see man running. And is that going to create the prettiest plays all the time for Breece Hall? No, but that's why Braylon Allen was drafted here, right? Like Braylon Allen is a guy that I've talked about this before at Wisconsin, his first 2 years there when he was a 17 and 18-year-old playing college football. It's insane, right? They were a man run game, and he was awesome. They went to a zone run game his last season as a 19-year-old, and he was not so awesome. He didn't look like the same guy. He was still solid, but not the same guy. Breece, if they're going to run zone plays, like Breece is going to get the ball, Breece is going to be good no matter what. It doesn't matter for Breece. He's just that talented. Where you sell Breece on being a more man run blocking team is like, hey, Breece, the hole's going to be there. Like there's not much thinking. There's not much, hey, I got to read this and cut up the field, which Breece is great at. It's your Breece Hall. If we spring you to the second or third level, that is a nightmare for a safety or an off-ball linebacker that's 220 pounds. So I think the Jets want to be a more punch you in the face kind of run team. And I think they also don't want to completely wear Breece out by November, which is why they've invested so much into the running back position. And everything the Jets have done tells you what they want to be. You drafted a man scheme runner in Braylon Allen. And I know Isaiah Davis is a power runner as well. You got Tyron Smith, John Simpson, and Morgan Moses. You really like your tight end 2 in Jeremy Ruckert, who's a good blocker. Couldn't wait to get CJ Uzama out the door. The Jets are telling you what they want to be. Believe them.
Yeah, Allen, I think, is going to be fun as a number 2. Little bowling ball, downhill. Just put your head down, give Breece a break, keep the chains moving. And with Breece, he should have the opportunity to do what he did against Denver a couple times in back-to-back years, more often now, where he just breaks to the second level untouched and then he's gone. Like once he gets there, if he has a head of steam, that's when you get the 60, 70-yard touchdowns. And we saw those against Denver each of the last 2 years. We saw him spring one against the Giants, although that was on a check down. Like there's going to be more home runs this year, I think, both in the run and the pass game. I also think, like we've talked about a lot, Breece is going to kind of be the de facto number 2 receiver to start the year. And second in targets, I think, behind Garrett Wilson, because Rodgers is going to love to check it down to him, love to set up the screen game to him where he can create a ton of yards. After that, I think you're looking at Conklin, and then after that, it's going to depend how quick Mike Williams gets healthy and how much Corley really hits the ground running as a rookie. I think from a passing game perspective, we know Rodgers is going to be improvisational at the line, and he's going to move people around and try to pick up matchups. I think he's going to be working very closely with Garrett Wilson the way he did with Devontae Adams, where Garrett's going to be all over the formation. He's going to be in the slot. He's going to be outside. They're going to try to create rub routes for him so he can do that little under route and get sprung, when they need to move the chains or when they're in the red zone. Put him in the slot and have him do the speed out that they used to always do with Devontae, sometimes off motion where you could get him in the end zone. I think he's going to be everywhere and be the, far and away number one receiver. The bigger question is how does the rest of the unit come together? How many times a game is Mike Williams getting that 9 route thrown to him? Is Corley used as a traditional slot receiver, or is that more of Gibson and they use Corley more as like a gadget player until he gets more comfortable? And then with Conklin, do we see sort of an expansion of his route tree at all with a better quarterback, or is he just kind of going to put together like that like random Robert Tunyon type season where he came out of nowhere and had like 10 touchdowns and was like
Could
super
happen.
productive because he's just open a lot because people are focused on Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and now he's got a really good quarterback who constantly is finding him in the middle of the field, and particularly finding him in the red zone where he really hasn't made much of an impact since coming over to the Jets. So how they carve up this route tree and how it all filters down off the Rodgers-Wilson relationship, I think is going to be really interesting to watch. And then again, also how overall crazy does Rodgers get with changing the plays at the line and creating the tempo. And I hope we're going to see some of that where he says, let's call 2 plays in the huddle. Let's call the play at the line. Let's not snap the ball with 1 second left on the play clock. Let's keep the tempo moving. And even in that one preseason drive, you got a little taste of it. You saw the smoke screen to Garrett Wilson, easy 11 yards. You saw him try to target Uzama over the middle. Uzama can't catch. It didn't work. That's fine. They'll do that with Conklin or Ruckert. And then just the check at the line to Garrett Wilson on the back shoulder fade. Like it's going to be a little more backyard football, which when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers and you have a special talent like Garrett Wilson, it's almost impossible to defend. If you watch some of that prime Rodgers Devontae, especially when they get to third down in the red zone and he's running the half motion and coming back and forth, like he's running the rub routes. Like there's nothing you can do. If a receiver that good is in sync with his quarterback, it's effectively uncoverable.